Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to RCI TV for round 2 of the GT3 World Championship. We started the season out at a very wet Spa-Francorchamps, and now we've come all the way over to the southern coast of the African continent for two 30-minute races at Kyalami. My name is Ryan Gill. I'll be your lead commentator for this evening, and joining me in the commentary box, well, it's my co-host for the rest of this championship. Jesse, how are you doing tonight in, what looks like fine weather compared to last week?
Yeah, it is. I can definitely tell you guys at home that I have taken off the jacket. Hello, Ryan. And it's going to be a great race, everybody. Second round of the GT3 World Championship here at RCI. We're at Kyalami, and it couldn't be more star-studded than this race. Look at all of the names, and we've had a couple of new entries as well.
We've got two kind of guest appearances tonight. They were drivers that unfortunately didn't go through the qualification phase. They, didn't have the time, unfortunately, so they kind of wanted to join in on the championship later, and we thought, well, look, people have had to go through the qualifying phase. We've got to, we've got to look at this properly. We know that both Darren King and Kieran Prendergast, who are the two drivers joining us here tonight for the first time in the championship for the season, we know that they're split one pace, Jesse. But obviously, we want to make it fair for the guys that have had to go through qualifying. So, obviously, Darren King and Kieran Prendergast, they missed out on round 1. And they are allowed to race here in round 2, but they will not score points in round 2. They will score points from round 3 onwards. So that is their penalty for not going through the pre-qualification process. And I think that's pretty fair, Jesse Lee, that they miss a round, and then of course they have a round that they can attend, but they won't be able to score points for it. 25% of the season in which they won't be able to score points. Seems like a pretty fair trade for missing pre-qualification, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. And also, I respect their dedication, knowing that they won't score points for 25% of the championship, but they still want to proceed, as Daniel Jorge going way off the track right there. We've seen him have a couple of wide maneuvers here trying to get everything out of that Ferrari, but I think it's completely fair. I think that they also feel that it's fair enough, and they're competitors. They just want to race, and good on them. And I think it's, the fair compromise that works for everybody.
Yeah, so obviously Darren King and Kieran Prendergast marked on the timing board with that silver placard. That's how you know that they're the guest drivers for tonight, and they won't score points for this round, but they will from round 3 onwards. But let's get into proceedings here tonight, Jesse, because we've only got just over a minute until we get into qualifying. What is going to be the format for tonight, I hear you ask? Because we kind of went over how, the calendar's a bit different this time. And, we've gone into a few different formats. So tonight, 50-minute practice session, which we're just getting to the end of now, will be followed by a 10-minute qualifying 1. That will be then followed by the first 30-minute race of the evening, of which we will then get a 5-minute practice 2 session, just to allow the drivers to cool down a bit after the 30-minute sprint race. We'll then have a second qualifying session to determine the order for race 2. And then, of course, we will have a second 30-minute race. No pit stops required for either of the races here tonight. It's just a pure sprint from lights out to the end, Jesse. And, I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely interested here, because despite the fact this is what the real sort of GT series does, you don't see a ton of this sort of racing in esports. And it's quite curious to me that we don't have a lot of the actual official kind of style. I know the bigger series do, in fact, but it's going to be different for us. It's the first time we've ever done a race quite like this in a championship. So what you're going to see here is 2 qualifyings where everybody's trying to get all they can. Could have potentially different qualifying orders here, which is sort of the name of the game. And in addition to that, if you had a bad race one or felt that you left something on the table, you're going to be over anxious to get into race two and make up for those shortcomings. Again, both of the races count for points, folks. It, we may see some mayhem here in race two. That at least seems to be sort of what a lot of people are expecting today.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, just to touch on that point, both races obviously do count for points, but there is half points available for these 30-minute races. So obviously, the only way to score a full set of points here today would be to go out and get fastest lap, pole position, and a race win in both events here tonight. And that's going to be fairly difficult for these guys to do. But as we come to the end of practice session, it's George Boothby, the 488 Evo Cup Championship leader, that will end the first practice session of the evening, and the much more relevant practice session of the evening at the top spot. Obviously, James Parker, championship leader, sitting in at second to the end of the practice session. But here is qualifying. So we have about 35 cars ready to go out tonight.
Oh, look at them going.
And
Look at them going
out
for
for
it.
qualifying. I mean, 10-minute qualifying session, it is going to be really packed. And obviously, getting out there early, getting some clean air is going to be so important. And look at this. João Cavaca, he's the one out at the front of the pack in the number 33 Ferrari. And he's going to be the one that will kind of set the pace for the outlap that you'll see here in the qualifying session. He's going to determine how quick or how slow he wants to go. Obviously, you can overtake on the outlap. There's no rules against that, but obviously he'll want to stay ahead of everyone else to make sure that he has the cleanest air possible for his flying lap. And, trying to fit, 35 cars around this place, it's going to be pretty difficult, Jesse, and it's going to be even more difficult tomorrow when we come for the qualifying and Super Pole of the 24 Hours of Kyalami, because we've got that going on Saturday as well, on top of the Porsche Battle Race that will also be featuring here. Kyalami all around for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, some of these drivers getting a triple dose of Kyalami this weekend, so they will certainly know their way around here. But this qualifying session, keep in mind, this is the first of two. This is qualifying for race number one. So they are all trying to fan out and get their best sort of spacing they can, which is difficult to do. For those of you wondering, we have 30 cars on track this weekend for this particular series, and Kyalami is not the biggest track in the world when you're trying to find space. And in fact, if you look at that track map, there is a lot of space that they could have found, but the 10-minute session, Ryan, you can't really forfeit 2 minutes just to try and find a big gap.
No, you can't, but here we go, on board with João Cavaca for his first flying lap around here in qualifying. He's gone through the Kink, Crowthorne and up the Yuxke sweep and now makes his way to Barbecue. You can see the old start-finish straight and pit box area there. As he rushes now down towards Sunset, the long right-hander here. Try and keep as much speed as you can. Downshifts into third gear in the Ferrari, looking pretty smooth at the moment as he just goes over the curb there, braking now into Clubhouse Bend, and now he's going to make his way towards the S's fast sequence of corners. And you've got to make sure you get it right on the curbs here. Don't put the throttle down too early, or you will find yourself going wide off on the circuit, pick up a track limit, but João Cavaca seems to have kept it well between the white lines. Now up to Leo Kopp at the top of the hill. The hairpin nice and tight on the inside line. And making his way down Mineshaft now. The long run down the hill and flat out through the left-hander. He'll make his way towards the Crocodiles. One of the best corner names, I think, on this circuit, in my opinion. Very tight right-hander here, and obviously it tightens even so as you come onto the exit. Then it's the make or break corner. It's Cheetah. Get this one right or get it wrong, and it can be race or lap over. João Cavaca gets it spot on as he comes down towards Ingwe for the first time on his flying lap. Then out on to the outer part of the runoff. Goes towards the timing line. It's a 141.0 from João Cavaca. It's immediately beaten by the championship leader, James Parker, with a 140.848.
Well, James Parker, of course, had that excellent sort of run to the flag last week at a very wet Spa. So what he's trying to do here is go ahead and make sure he has that lead, but he doesn't. Philippe Samard in the 42 EEG Motorsports Aston Martin takes the top spot at a 40.752. Nears makes no difference, 1/10 faster than James Parker. Joe McCauley is going to take his number 18 Honda into the third spot. Zhao Kavaka now back down to fourth place. Darren King, the invitee with the silver placard, will race for glory today, but not points. Slots himself all the way up into the fifth position, and he is a racy boy.
He definitely is. Like you said, no points on offer for Darren King or Kieran Prendergast, but a point to prove nonetheless here today that they definitely do deserve to be in this split. And Darren King and both Kieran Prendergast and Darren King doing just that at the moment. Both of them well within a second of the pole position lap time at the moment. James Parker, though, the only one within a 10th of Philippe Simard. So it seems like it could be roles reversed this time round at Kyalami for the front row, but Ismail Lebrec has just decided to change that with his NSX going all the way up onto the front row, 69,000 tenths of a second behind Philippe Simard. Nice on that one, Ismail Lebrec, but not quite enough to take him provisional pole. 4.5 minutes of qualifying remain.
Ishmael Lebrec, I was worried about him watching him in practice. He was well down the order, but I think that might have been a bit of a red herring because his speed is perfectly fine. Nothing out of the ordinary there. James Parker, of course, now up into down into the third place position, I should say. Not a whole lot in it. You have to go all the way back to 19th place before we go outside of 1 second the gap. That's sort of what we expect from Kyalami. And when they're qualifying this closely together, you can imagine what the racing is going to be like.
Yeah, and something else interesting that I'm seeing here, Jesse, it seems that for the second week in a row, Valentin Barrier still hasn't got a qualifying lap time down on the board. He didn't set a qualifying lap at Spa, and he is sitting dead last at the moment in qualifying here at Kyalami. Of course, we do have a second qualifying session coming up for race 2. So the qualifying for this only determines race 1, as we're looking at George Boothby here at the moment in the 666. He's the 488 Evo Cup Championship leader. Of course, that championship wrapping up on Monday evening at Imola. Be sure to tune in for that one. It's going to look fairly interesting, in fact, as George Boothby can still be caught for the championship, and considering the competition he faced at Monza, could turn out to be a lot closer. You'll have Sam Wright and George Smith in the box for that one on Monday, but we remain here with just about 3 minutes to go of qualifying. And Jesse, it seems to me, you know, just looking down the order here at the moment, that there seems to be a pretty significant difference in, you know, the groups of Ferrari drivers that we have out here today. We have Tavrain and Boothby obviously up into the top 10, Jakubaka just into the top 10, Darren King and Prendergast there, and then the next Ferrari is all the way down in 25th. So the general lap times of the Ferrari seem to be quite spread out, as I've just realized that the 1 second gap from pole position going all the way down to 26.
Oh dear. Now. Yeah, that's what happens. Whenever you practice a lot on a track, I feel like Kyalami is one of those tracks where there is a clear sort of favorite, if you will, but it doesn't really matter. It has a little bit of everything. It has low speed corners, fast speed corners, 90 degrees, it's straightaways, it's got everything. So in a way, Kyalami is almost like a great equalizer. Ishmael Lebrec here is on a flyer. I don't know if this will be good enough for pole, but it might get him a little closer to
definitely
Samard.
Will.
Oh, I just saw an update. Here we go. Ishmael Lebrec is going to drop a 40.62 and take over the pole provisionally from Philippe Samard, dropping him down to the second starting spot. Steele Van Assen, 2/10 off the pace in the 9.62. He finished second at Spa and is looking to avenge that loss after being passed late in that race. So
Oh,
not
but
a bad job.
Jesse,
Look
don't
at
count out
Joe.
Samard. Don't count
No,
out Samard. He's just about to cross the line. And Philippe Samard, is that going to be enough to retake provisional pole? No, it's not. He
no.
lost time out of the final corner.
Joe McCauley came in with a stonking lap, half a tenth off of Lebrecht there. McCauley out of nowhere. And that will pretty much do it for qualifying. A few cars left going around, but Ishmael Lebrecht holding his breath right now as the final few cars come across the line.
Well, Jesse, we've still got 35 seconds of qualifying left. Hang on a minute. You're getting a bit ahead of yourself.
My timing screen has gone absolutely insane, and for that I do apologize, but my timing screen needs a refresh.
Well, whilst your timing screen gets a refresh, Joe McCauley, actually, in the NSX, is going quicker. Ismail Lebrecht has gone provisional pole, of course, but Joe McCauley could be about to change that. He's almost a quarter of a second up on his lap time as he makes his way down mineshaft here at the moment. Ismail Lebrecht, who you can see on screen, is also up on his lap time by almost a tenth of a second. He'll cross the line. It's a 140.5 for the provisional pole sitter. Is that going to be enough, though? It's just under a tenth quicker than what Joe McCauley's personal best has been. But here is Joe McCauley.
Joe's on one.
By a tenth and a half. If he can keep the speed through the final corner, he's gained time through the final corner, Jesse. This is going to be pole position. Joe McCauley up towards the line. It's a 140.5 to put two NSX cars on the front row of the grid at Kyalami.
So earlier, when I said that there is a clear favorite around here, I was indeed talking about the Honda. But I didn't expect that, especially after how much I talked up the fact that it didn't really seem to matter. But if you want to be on the front row, it does indeed appear like it matters ever so slightly. Joe McCauley absolutely throwing it down. He was just a little bit off, and even with Lebrecht's improvement, McCauley was able to bust through with that 40.5. Excellent stuff. George Boothby's going to have to settle for 10th place. Actually, he's going to get knocked back by Peffett there in the 195. So continuing to fall back through the field, and again, a couple more cars coming across the line, improving their position. Absolutely crazy stuff. And they got to do it all over again, Ryan.
They will have to do it all over again later on. And, of course, we'll look forward to that. But the first race of this evening will be led by two NSX cars at the front row of the grid, Joe McCauley and Ismail Lebrecht in the 140.5s, the only ones in the 140.5s, the other ones in the 140.6s or below even. And two Hondas doing very well to put themselves at the front of the grid. The next Honda down, actually, is Herbert Frischel, the number 86, all the way down in 19th place. So he didn't quite do as well as some of his peers, but we can have a look at the championship standings, actually, before we get into proceedings here tonight. We do have the 5-minute pre-race start time correct this time around for the championship, so we can get into what the championship standings are going to look like. Jesse, of course, if you were here last week, you'll kind of already know what the championship standings kind of look like, but obviously it's always nice to have a visual cue as to what they will be looking like. So we'll start all the way at the top of the standings as we do. James Parker in the Triple Eight for the Coach Dave Academy Aston Martin sits with 72 points, fastest lap and pole position, alongside the win that he took in Spa, means he has 72 points to his name. Milton Steele-Vason has 58 points, and Alexander Karsten in the top three. Then moving down slightly, of course, Jaroslav Honzik had a great recovery, didn't he, Jesse, after his poor start?
He sure did.
And put himself up into fourth place. Fabien Peffert in fifth, and Simon Keeble, George Boothby, Philippe Simard, Konstantin Soldatov, and Grant Willamot, obviously rounding out the top 10. You can see all the drivers there.
A lot of Britain in that top 10.
There is a lot of Britain, and it's great that we can see the nationalities of each driver now as we look through the standings. Then we go on to the second page. It's Daniel Georges with 25 points, Hasma Bel Hussein with 23. He's in 12th place. Christopher Verstappen in 13th place. Shermatinsky in 14th. I would expected to see him a bit higher up the order, as well as Harry Conway sitting in 15th place in the championship as well. Herbert Freschel, Jordan Grant Smith. I've already seen a couple of band Geordies in the chat with
Never fails.
John Clements right behind him. But of course, we're not done quite yet. There's a third page to go as well. Ismail Lebrec didn't have a great result out in Spa. I believe he got spun at the bus stop chicane. Valentin Barrier, like I said, started at the back of the grid. So he didn't really have the greatest time out. Juraj Svenček, Christopher Tevrayan, and Tevrayan actually qualified 16th place for this race, so much better than he qualified for last week. He'll be hoping to improve on his finishing position as well. Bukait in 25th, Azevedo and Jauka Vaca in 27th, Oscar Houle, and of course Joe McCauley, the pole sitter for today, was didn't really have the greatest time out, did he, Jesse? Finishing down in 29th for the first race. And then we'll go on to the fourth page, which is non-point scorers so far for the championship. They are Dave Van Den Eet, Christian Latter, and Adam Tompkins. And these were three drivers that I believe had signed out for the first race of the season, so they were not scheduled to pick up points anyway, so it makes sense that they're all the way at the back of the order. Of course, Kieran Prendergast and Darren King will be added to this list after this race, but of course they will not score points tonight. So those are the championship standings, and it's always good to see where everyone is, and nice to see all the nationalities that we've got representing here tonight, Jesse.
Yeah, you love to see that. You love to see just where all the drivers are from, where they're hailing from, and we have such a nice variety here at RCI. And one thing I talked about to Billy Octane about a week ago about he's the only Estonian sim racer I know, and I think he's the only Estonian sim racer he knows, like that does like proper sort of casted esports. So very strange. I asked him why he thinks he's the only one. He says, well, we're a small country, Jesse. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And love to see some more Estonian esports drivers, but a great melting pot of all different nationalities. Love to see that on the board now. And within the final 20 some seconds here before we set out on the pace lap. And well, I think it's about time, Ryan. We pick who we think is going to do well and make a prediction for the race, and I shall go first. I think Lebrec and Macaulay
choose. You don't choose yourself to go first. This isn't how it works.
That is how it's going to work this week. I'm gonna say something outlandish. Macaulay and Lebrec are going to be involved in an incident, and Philippe Simard is going to dance his way to victory in race 1 here today.
Well, I mean, I think if it comes down to race pace, we are gonna be looking, at kind of like the Aston Martins are definitely the more race pace focused cars, if I can get my words out. But you know what, Joe McCauley, Ismail Lebrec, their driver's perfectly capable of managing a race, and they've chosen the NSX for this championship, but they wouldn't have just chosen these cars on a whim. They've chosen these cars because they kind of have an understanding. They want to drive them. They want to do well with them, especially considering it is such an underrepresented brand within, ACC. We don't really see them that often. So, picking Simard, I can understand it. But you've got to remember what happened to Simard last week, Jesse. Qualified on the front row, but just kept going backwards. And it's not really the characteristic you would see from, a car and a driver that is definitely much more of a race pace focused driver. So, you know, I kind of understand your line of thinking, but I've also got my own concerns with it. I mean, personally for me, though, I think it's going to be one of the NSX boys up front. It sounds like the easy pick because they've qualified at the front, but as we know, GT3 racing is anything but predictable, and overtaking is much more common than you would see in traditional Formula One racing. So, with all that said, you know what? I'm going to go for Ismail Lebrec here today. Joe McCauley, he's qualified on pole. He's qualified on pole, but I think Ismail
You built
Lebrec,
me up and threw me a curveball right there. I didn't expect that.
I think Ismail Lebrec is going to do it today. I think he's got the pace. I think that when it comes down to those fine margins of making mistakes and getting away with it and, you know, getting everything right, I think Ismail Lebrec, I think he's just a bit more clinical than Joe McCauley. But I'll be glad to be proven wrong by the Scotsman, for sure. And it could be that Joe McCauley does prove me wrong here today. But anyway, they start lining up 2 by 2 for the start of this race. Of course, 2 Hondas on the front row of the grid. We've got a Bentley and an Aston Martin on the second row, a Porsche and a Ferrari on the third row.
Remember, Ryan, you got to be real careful here with the starting procedure. This is the easiest track in ACC to get a starting violation.
It definitely is. There was actually an update to try and alleviate that issue. Specifically at tracks like Kyalami in the 1.7 update. Glad to see that update coming out in time for this circuit. But anyway, here we go then. We round the final corner. We are 2 by 2, 2 NSX at the front. 30 minutes of racing. We'll have 2 races here for you tonight, but this is the first one. And you were speaking of drive-through penalties at the start, Jesse. Well, we've got 3 of them coming through on the start.
Oh, dear.
It's not the ideal start for a few of them, but it's definitely the ideal start for the NSX boys up front. And look at Ismail Lebrec. What a start as he goes round the outside of turn 2 and into the lead.
Brian Gill has an absolute crystal ball, and so do I for that matter. João Cavaca, Turainen, and Prendergast all with a starting violation. So they're going to have to come in and serve a drive-through, and that will pretty much spell the end of their race in this short 30-minute format. But meanwhile, Ismail Lebrec leading Joe McCauley after that lightning start. Now all of a sudden, McCauley falling back into the hands of Willemot. Will Willemot have a shot at second place?
It's going to be interesting to see how Willemot does for the Turn 1 Pro Bentley, but it was the ideal start for Ismail Lebrec, and you can kind of see already there that the Bentley on the back of Joe McCauley. Joe McCauley just didn't really get away as well as he probably would have liked. Of course, Philippe Samard lost out to Willemot as well because he was on the inside line for Turn 2, but it seems like the Bentley going round the outside just as Ismail Lebrec did to Joe McCauley. So that outside line seems to be in the favoured part. We've got a Ferrari going around in the background. That's Darren King. That's one of the invitee drivers for tonight. Stuck in the middle of the Crocodiles. Everyone avoids him.
That was the smartest move. Moving would have caused a major problem here. Darren King looking to turn in, got wedged in there, got turned by the Aston Martin, and all the 38 can do here is hope and pray he doesn't get hit and cause any damage. Luckily, all the drivers heads up and seeing the yellow flags. Well, unfortunately for Darren, he has to wait for every single car to go through, but the smart move there, and now he rejoins the race. And more importantly, Ryan, he didn't ruin his race. Now he gets to rejoin. I don't think there's enough damage on that car to matter.
No, it definitely just seemed like the car got turned around a bit. Probably not a massive amount of damage on that car. The one benefit Darren King can go home with tonight, regardless of whether he finishes or not, is that he wouldn't have scored points anyway, so it doesn't matter if he's last at the moment. But Darren King, he'll look forward to seeing if he can gain any positions in what remains of this race. 27.5 minutes left. Valentin Barrier, by the way, he didn't have a great qualifying session, now finds himself all the way up into 11th place. What an incredible start for the number 72. He's on the brink of getting into the top 10. He's just got Herbert Frushell in front of him, and there's a massive gap there, a 3-second gap between 10th and 9th. And I wonder if that had to do with Darren King's car being stuck in the middle of the Crocodiles. But either way, Valentin Barrier is looking at the back of that NSX and actually Herbert Frischel qualified down in 19th place as well, so he's had a fantastic start alongside Valentin Barrier.
Yeah, he absolutely has. I'm worried about Svenchek and Prendergast here. They haven't came in to serve that drive-through. If they don't do that in the next lap or so, they will be disqualified from this race entirely. They have to come in a set number of laps, otherwise they will face a disqualification. And I don't know how we do that here at RCI. If we give penalties to if we give points to people that are disqualified, I don't think we do. So, 1 or 2 points is a lot better. And in fact, there they go. They have one more lap to serve that penalty. They do not come through and serve it this time either. So the melee in the middle and the start violations in the middle as well is where we are, with Ishmael Lebrecq boasting a near 1 second lead over Joe McCauley, but Willamont trying to get that second place away, and Philippe Samard not far behind as well. Looks like a nice line there. Everybody up front kind of minding their own business right now, but anything can happen here. 25 minutes, this short sprint race, half points on play for this particular race. And I just don't know. I think you may have called it, Ryan. I don't think anyone's going to catch Ishmael today.
He's looking in absolutely fine form, isn't he, as he's going at the moment? Just about a 1 second gap between himself. Joe McCauley's got almost a second gap between him and Willamot starting to get under pressure from the likes of Philippe Samard. Second place in the championship for Milton Steele Vason. He sits 13th at the moment in the order for this race, right behind George Boothby in the 666. Of course, what a lot of these guys are going to be kind of glad of is that, this race does only give out half points, and that's one of the good things about these kind of sprint races, is that if you have a bad race, it's not really going to cripple your championship standings hopes, because there's another race to come this evening. That the individual races don't particularly give out full points, so you can afford to have a bad race in one of these races and it won't affect you too badly. Meanwhile, Kieran Prendergast has been disqualified by ACC for not serving that drive-through penalty. Of course, he's one of the guest drivers here tonight, so he wouldn't have been scoring points.
Ryan, anyway. I don't know, Ryan. I don't think so. Prendergast actually came in to serve his penalty. The 107 Uri Svenchek has been disqualified for not serving his penalty. So Svenchek disqualified. The number 10 of Kieran Prendergast is still out there. He's just tail into the field right now.
Oh, Steele Vason's turned. My apologies.
Oh, big hit!
As you were just correcting my incorrect point from earlier. No. But Steele Vason got turned around, and then a couple of cars caught up in the melee.
Oh,
he just gets hit from behind, and then of course he's got nowhere.
Oh,
he can't really get out of the way in time, unfortunately.
Brian, I think that whoever that yellow Mercedes is the one that caused that chain reaction, and they get away scot-free. But massive incident, and this is not where Steele Vason wants to be. He's second in this championship. This would be very detrimental to his hopes, even at half points for this race.
I can actually tell you who that driver was, Jesse, in the yellow Mercedes. There's only one Mercedes with that fluorescent yellow color. And it's unfortunately the rather striking one of Jaroslav Honzik. Jardia possibly at fault for that incident. We don't know the full story. We haven't seen all the angles.
Indeed.
And we will leave that to the stewarding team here tonight, who will be assessing everything and handing out penalties as need be. They will look at everything and they'll hand out whatever penalties are required. But obviously, from you and I, from the little perspective that we saw, we're probably expecting a penalty Jardia's way. But we'll hold our decisions for now and see what the stewards say later on, and we'll refocus on what is going on in the race. And we're looking at Alexander Karsten at the moment in the Bentley in 7th place. He's chasing down the Frenchman Bouquet. And Samard has actually lost a position, Jesse, I've just noticed. Grant Smith has moved up into 4th. So the Porsche, the hashtag ban Geordie fans will be going mental in the chat, as their driver moves up into 4th place. Didn't have a great result out in round 1, but doing much better here at Kyalami, and actually looking a bit tasty on the back of that Bentley.
He is indeed. Grant Smith is absolutely trending in the right direction. That Porsche for GS Racing showing that it has the pace to get up here and fight for a podium spot. The Geordie fans will be ecstatic about this. And meanwhile, up front, the gap has somewhat stabilized between Lebrecht and Macaulay. And Willamette here, who you see the Bentley in front here, that very I don't know what you would call that sort of livery. It looks like it's been sort of ionized or something. It's very nice either way. Grant Smith all over the back of him here down into turn 2. Doesn't do anything here, but very clearly that Porsche has the legs over the 316.
So Ismail Lebrecht and Joe Macaulay clearing themselves off, have a nice little gap here to themselves. It almost kind of looks like a bit of team orders going on here, but I'm sure it's not. There are no teams obviously in here, but obviously I think maybe just trying to give each other a bit of a tow, a bit of a help out here. Obviously 2 NSX cars trying to work together. Ismail Lebrecht and Joe Macaulay have had extensive talks about how well they want to do in the NSX this season, and here is Jardier on the back of Boothby. This is the corner he was just involved in an incident with earlier on, but not going to have an incident with George Boothby this time around. Meanwhile, James Parker has picked up a 15-second time penalty. And as I look down to the penalty report sheet that Cameron de Bastos has just handed to me, that's for an incident involving the 666 of George Boothby. That was on lap 1 as well, turn 2. So that's obviously something we didn't quite catch amongst...
Yeah, we didn't see that.
Amongst us watching Ismail Lebrecht and Joe Macaulay go side-by-side into turn 1, we didn't quite see that. And, well, James Parker, 15-second time penalty. I can only assume that's for pushing a competitor off-road or overtake with contact that wasn't given back. So we'll have to see how all of this plays out, but 15 seconds going towards the championship leader either way. And Jaroslav Honzik getting past his fellow community teammate, Valentin Barrier. And
why do they always seem to be having to race each other, Barrier and Jardier? Interesting, isn't it?
There's something about that community team, you know, and well, Valentin Barrier had a fantastic start to the race, and it's quite going to plan here as Georges in the 777.
He's not happy.
Through.
Oh, that was frustration. That was a man not being happy. And here he's going to go for one. He's going to go for a spin. Simon Keeble.
Oh, no. Just getting too impatient as they came into barbecue and just thinking that he could maybe sneak up the inside of Valentin Barrier. He maybe gave him a little bit of a tap there as well. Thought he could go up the inside. Barrier was there, though. And then it looked like another Ferrari got involved in as well. That was Azevedo that got involved in that one. Just a little bit of a tap on the Aston Martin. But Valentin Barrier, unfortunately. And is Keeble still ahead? Or is he behind now? I think he's behind. So I don't think he's gained anything out of that. But he probably will still get a penalty come his way.
Of course, we should mention live stewards for the Friday GT Championship. As per usual, thanks to all of those guys and gals that keep the race fair. And we're going to go 3 wide down here. It's going to get it done. Look at that move in between and gets it done through the inside. Can you believe that?
Well, these guys, it's a sprint race.
There's
only half points on offer, but someone hasn't told these guys there's a Ferrari around as well, and has it been turned around fully? I don't think it has. Bel Hussein was half spun by the McLaren of Christian Lata, but I think he managed to not turn back around the right way. Lata's given up the position. He's going to give it back. He says, look, I don't really deserve that. I kind of spun you. So he's given that one back. I don't think there'll be a penalty for that one, considering there wasn't really that much lost in terms of time. And it's all getting a bit scrappy out here, Jesse, with 17 minutes to go.
Well, Ryan, I predicted that the second race would be the scrappy one, but this has been extra fighty, and I think that's a little bit to do with Kyalami, to be honest. It's not the widest track. There are a ton of passing lanes, but you have to be millimeter perfect to pull off the move, and there has to be some give and some take. And in a 30-minute race, we're getting exactly what I expected to see. I expected to see some argy-bargy moves and some ill-advised moves at that, and I think we've certainly seen that in the first 15 minutes of this race as we near the halfway point. Like I said, we have live stewards here that will be taking care of all the sort of adjudication that is needed, and we didn't actually introduce Nick Setnick, the broadcaster, producer, man behind the cameras today, so hello to him and thank him for bringing you all these shots and replays of the race. As we get to the halfway point here nearly, it's I just wonder if it's going to calm down, Ryan, or race 2 is going to be even more so, considering those that haven't had the best race 1 will be looking for a little extra, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting, isn't it? If you have a bad race 1, do you go for more risks in
like James Parker, for instance?
Yeah, like James Parker, he's picked up a 15-second time penalty, and with how short this race is, that 15-second time penalty probably be a bit more significant than it would be in a 1-hour race, where you have more time to build up a gap and such. And I think James Parker at the moment, I mean, that 15-second penalty, Jesse, I'm looking here at the moment, that could drop him about 5 or 6 places. To be quite significant, maybe even more than that. But James Parker, he's got to get on with it. He's got 15 minutes to try and stretch as much of a gap as he can and see if he can put himself in a better position. And, of course, people like Svenchek, who unfortunately got disqualified through the out of position on the grid, he'll be looking for a much better second race as well. And we cut back to the battle for the final podium place.
Oh, by the way...
This is still going on. Willamot from Grant Smith from Simard and Bouquet in the Porsche is at the back there as well. Four-way battle for third place. And this Bentley, it's looking like a bit of a slow boat at the front of this train.
Yeah, it sure is. You saw that Grant Smith had a bit of a lead on Simard. Simard is actually going real defensive on Bouquet right there, and has to, in fact, do that, as he's actually going to still take it around the outside as the 194. Will he have the turn in here? It looks like no, he will not, as he gets over the curb. So order restored there for 5th place for the moment. And meanwhile, Grant Smith still looking for that pass on the 316 Bentley. Can't do it, has to fall in line through Sunset. And this, you would hate to see such a great race between these two packs of cars turn into contact, but we've already seen it so many times, you almost sort of recoil in fear of it. But I suspect these guys might be able to pull off some of these moves. I feel like Simard's falling back a little bit. Bouquet has the speed, and I think Grant Smith has the power here, but he's playing it very, very, very close to his chest right now. But up front, Ishmael Lebrec in the 67 Honda still leads us around. Joe McCauley still hanging out. It was under a second about a lap ago. Unknown if Lebrec just had a slower lap or McCauley had a faster one, but that gap has went back out to 1.2 seconds here. McCauley doing everything he can to stay right up close to him in case, maybe Lebrec makes a little bit of a mistake here. But the Honda is very much in sync here.
Yeah, the Honda's absolutely flying at the moment, and Herbert Frechel has worked his way up into 9th place, so he's doing pretty well in the Honda as well. We're looking at Alban Bouquet, though, for the Esports Performance Racing team, and James Parker just arriving on the end of this train, but of course he does have that 15-second time penalty, which is going to unfortunately hamper his position. Even if he does make up a couple of places here on pace, the championship leader, he won't remain the championship leader after this race, not unless he can pull off an absolute miracle performance in the next 12 minutes of this race. But Jordan Grant-Smith continues his chase of Willamot in the Bentley, and This is one of
He
those
keeps
moments,
giving him a
Jesse.
look.
Yeah, this is one of those moments, though, Jesse, where I think having the bigger car really is the advantage here, because you can make that car so much wider than it actually is when you need to, and also at the same time, it's particularly difficult for cars that aren't as big or aren't as heavy to kind of push cars like that out of the way. The Ferrari, the old Ferrari particularly, had that kind of issue where it wasn't really the kind of car you could out-muscle other people with. And Porsche isn't really that kind of car either. Speaking of Ferraris, though, we've got Ferrari versus Ferrari with an Aston Martin right in front, and that is Tavrayan just defending his position from Belsain there. And some rather
giving me heart palpitations over here.
Rather strict defending going on there, but all's fair in love and war. And we've got a 5-second penalty for car number 33. That's João Cavaca down in 28th place.
They were fighting that out in Leocop going 3 wide, and that's my thing with Leocop. You earlier were talking about some of the most difficult corners for you. For me, the only corner on this track that I particularly struggle with is Leocop, because not only is it a double apex, but it's a blind double apex, and anyone who's ever driven here in the dark, it's basically you just have to feel your way around here as a pass is Solotov trying to make this pass completely wide. Goes Jose Jorge, and it looks like the pass is going to be made, or is it indeed? Gets the pass done. Solotov position up now.
We've had a massive change. Willemot is dropping down the order. Willemot's dropping well down the order here. We haven't obviously caught this, but Willemot is down into 26th place. Make that 28th even, possibly.
Oh my goodness, bad place to sit still.
So something has happened there to the Bentley. Stationary down toward turn 2. Was there an incident, possibly?
Now, Ryan, I hate to speculate about something that we didn't see, but I would imagine Jordan Grant Smith went for a move and it didn't necessarily come off the way that he wanted it to down into turn 2. Now, I don't know that for sure, but considering how aggressive Jordan Grant Smith was and how defensive Willemot was, I think it might have came to contact.
And well, Jesse, I can actually tell you the answer myself. I've just had a little sneak at the replay preview. We don't unfortunately have a replay for you to see, but Willemot lost it on his own into turn 2. He lost it on his own halfway through turn 2, and that's why he was stranded in the middle of the corner.
Oh no!
So the Bentley must have been struggling for grip, and that might explain the lack of pace that we saw from Willemot as well.
Indeed.
If he was struggling for grip, but lost it on his own in the middle of the corner, no one else involved. And
oh my goodness,
that's I mean,
well, that's expert.
He'll be glad it's only half points.
Yeah, that's it. What can you imagine, Ryan? A potential podium, because he was doing well defending. Potential podium, well. And now all the way back down the field. And again, like you said, the only solace he can take is the fact that it's half points. So there you have it. Jordan Grant Smith, no hashtag blame Jordy here. Didn't do anything but apply the pressure onto Willemot. And in the end, perhaps the pressure is what did it. Jordan Grant Smith clean into 3rd place. So no blame Jordy here. That was excellent stuff. Then it's just unfortunate. You hate to see somebody, as Willemot's always down. He's down in 28th now. He is behind drivers that have had to take drive-through penalties to tell you how far back down he is. I think the only car still running is Darren King.
It's one of those things, though, isn't it? You say it's a talent of a racing driver, the ability to pressure someone into a mistake. It's something that exists, and it's something that, whether Willemot was struggling on tyres or not, we don't entirely know. We can only speculate. But if he wasn't struggling on tyres, and if he was just, being pressured so much by Jordan Grant Smith, then you've got to give props to Jordan Grant Smith for being able to pressure someone
Yep.
into a mistake and being so patient as well. He didn't rush the move either, and in the end, he didn't really have to make the overtake. He just had to make sure he avoided a Bentley that was going sideways through the corner. And, Jordan Grant-Smith has put himself up into third place, but his job isn't done yet. Less than 7 minutes to go in this race. And Philippe Samard fancies taking that third place he had back at the start of the race.
Well, I thought that Willemont was keeping the 120 behind him, and that was what's slowing him down. Turns out that is not the case. Philippe Samard thinking about digging deep down into the inside. He will not get the maneuver done there, but turns out that's not the case. It looks like the 42 of Samard has the same pace, if not a little more, than Grant Smith did. But you were talking about just pressuring somebody into making a mistake. That's the oldest trick in the racing book. Fill up that mirror the same way that Bouquet is filling up Samard's mirror. Just get as close as you can, make him uncomfortable, make him think you're going to make a move. And we saw Grant Smith do that. Samard, very different kind of driving style here. He's not getting right onto the back of Grant Smith, but what he is doing is he's showing him down the inside of every corner, as if showing him intent of, hey man, if I get the opportunity, I'm going to take it.
And you can start to see the effects of the pressure that Bouquet is starting to put on Samard, because now Jordan Grant-Smith is starting to just eke out a tiny bit of a gap. You can see that, Samard isn't right on the back of the Porsche anymore. And it's just those things when someone starts pressuring you, when they start getting under your skin, when you start looking in the mirrors more than you probably should be, it's when you start losing pace. And that's something that Samard, he's got to watch out for, but obviously he knows that better than I do. And meanwhile, Jaroslav Honzik has received a 15-second time penalty. That's one that we did expect to see come through when he turned around Steele Vason earlier on in the race. So, not going to say we called that one, but
you absolutely did, though, right? You absolutely did call that.
We expected it to come through, but obviously Jardier, unfortunate for him, fourth in the championship at the moment. He's probably going to lose out some places after this, and not going to be ideal for him, but a second race to come later on, of course. And speaking of penalties, Steele Vason is also going to receive a 15-second time penalty, although I'm not entirely sure what that is for. I'll have to monitor the penalty report sheets that Cameron is sending my way over the next couple of minutes and see if I can figure out what that one is for exactly. Meanwhile, Van Ack on the back of Kieran Prendergast, trying to make his way through. And of course, he's got Christian Latter right behind him as well. And Valentin Barrier all the way back in 25th place with a 15-second time penalty. It's not been a good championship so far for Valentin Barrier, has it?
No, it hasn't. He struggled in the wet at Spa, and just when you think that maybe he could have a better go of it here, as Vanka trying to be as defensive as possible, Lotta's going to go around the outside. This is not a bad move into two. You can make this outside move here. I've done it myself, and if I can do it, he can do it. Won't happen this time, though, as he's going to fall back in line, and the 122 is going to take the defensive line on the inside for turn 4 and 5 as they head up into Sunset. And that was an excellent defensive move by the Porsche. I think Lotta has the pace here, especially on the straightaway, as you see him gaining right there on your screen. And look at that, into the corner too a little bit as well out of the McLaren. So I think this pass may be a thing here. Look at him close right up to the back of the 122. Excellent stuff. And that right there, I would rather have that than top speed any day, because if you can pull up to somebody in the corner, well, you can beat them into the corner. So that's more important in my opinion. So we'll see if the 102 of Lotta can get this done. Minding his P's and Q's for the moment.
A lot of these guys towards the back going to be looking forward to race 2 at this moment in time. Billy Octane sitting in 18th place. Obviously one of the community moderators around here at RCI, and also part of the Triple R team, running that gorgeous 2Cs livery for the McLaren 720S. And I think we might start to see a few new liveries pop up soon, Jesse, of course, with the British GT DLC having
Indeed.
released in 1.7. I was told there are a couple new in-game custom livery presets for people to choose from for a couple of cars. The Bentley and the Ferrari, I think, being two of them. So we might start to see a few new custom liveries coming out onto the grid. Always nice to see, and a few new default ones as well. That Balf McLaren one that I'm happy to see, and Bel Hussein the send on
What?
Billy Octane.
Bellassane is really lucky that that curb is a car width wide.
I think he's
Otherwise,
given that back. I think
yeah,
he's
yeah,
given that place
he
back.
hasn't. Well, he was lucky that curb was as wide as it was, because had it not been, that would have thrown his car into the air when it bottomed out. But because that curb is really wide, he was able just to ride it. Billy Octane saw it and just sort of gave up. And of course, Bellasane's not that kind of guy, so he's going to give the position back. Say, all right, didn't quite get that right. I'll get you next time. But unfortunately, running out of next times, I think. As this battle here is sort of quieting down for the moment. I expected there to be a move on Vanka, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it's not really happening at the
Still
moment.
Vason now, looking like he's the one that's going to get passed by Vanka now.
Yeah, well, he's got a 15-second time penalty anyway, so I mean, he's probably going to finish behind him. Whether he wants to or not. So quite unfortunate for him. And speaking of finishing the race, Ismail Lebrec is on the final lap of the race, and look at the gap he's got to Joe McCauley. Whilst we've been watching everything else happening on track, Ismail Lebrec has just cleared off into the distance. He's had some hammer time-esque lap times coming out as of late, and has managed to pull away from the likes of Joe McCauley, and something that I kind of maybe alluded to a bit on the warm-up lap about Ismail Lebrec maybe just having the better consistency over Joe McCauley starting to become a bit more apparent. Kieran Prendergast making his way past Billy Octane into 20th place on the final lap here.
Something happened to Octane, because he was in 18th and now he's 21st. So something must have happened for him to lose that many positions in a few corners.
Well, I hope Bel Hussein didn't send it on him again, because that probably would be a steward's inquiry for multiple dive bombs. But either way, Ismail Lebrec, he will come towards the finish line, and he is the winner of the first race for this evening. Duly done, and very, very well done from Ismail Lebrec. Commanded that race. Joe McCauley will take second in the first of this evening's races, and Jordan Grant-Smith.
Desperation move incoming, Ryan.
In that third place, and yep, Felipe Martin-Bouquet running out the top five. Here is Van Ack into the Crocodiles, and he's made his way past the likes of Steele Vason, and I believe Christian Larter has got through as well, whilst all of that is going on. So Steele Vason losing a couple of places right here on the final lap of the race, and that looks like it's going to be it for them. James Parker, by the way, crosses the line in 6th place, but he won't stay in 6th place. He'll get demoted down to 10th, the timing boards tell me. Piffett will finish 6th, Frushall 7th, Carsten 8th, Boothby 9th, and of course, just as I mentioned, James Parker in 10th place.
Well, for the first half of that race, Ismail Lebrec was locked into a battle with Joe McCauley, but the second half told the rest of the story. Lebrec able to walk out the gap to about 4 seconds, I should say. Willamette falling out of the podium position and out of the top sort of 15 there. It was quite unfortunate for him, and a self-spin down in turn 2. And what about Grant Smith able to pull off that final podium position? Well, folks, having a 5-minute free practice here, shake down the car, and then we'll be right back into the second qualifying for race number 2. Same thing, 10-minute qualifying session in a 30-minute race for half points here at round 2 at Kyalami. And of course, no race next Friday. Ryan, we've got a little bit something special coming up.
We do. We won't be having a race on Friday next week because, of course, it is the week of the 24 hours of Kyalami. And, of course, with the 24 hours of Kyalami taking place on Saturday, uh, a lot of guys not really wanting to run in a race on the Friday evening in preparation. They want to put a lot of those hours towards preparing for the 24-hour. Apologies. And, you know, I think that's kind of understandable. It's going to be a bit weird for us, isn't it? We're going to be spending another week here in Kyalami. For the 24 hours, there's going to be no Friday racing for a week, but obviously we'll be back fairly soon, of course, for some more racing, and it's going to be well and truly exciting to get that underway. We're just waiting for the free practice session to tick down. Of course, this is just a chance for the guys to stand up, get a bit of a refreshment, cool off a bit, have a chat. I always know the race drivers like to let out their frustrations after a race, and I can see a few angry faces walking up and down the pit lane, Jesse.
Yeah, that's to be expected. I sort of expected it with this format. I had a private conversation with RCI's Mike Jones about, is this wise to have several small races in a single round? And he said, yeah, sure, why not? And I was like, well, have you ever watched the GT Championship on television? They typically do get a bit cross with each other, but unfortunately, they don't have long to be mad. They're going to have short memories here, as they're going to have to go back into qualifying and do battle again. So if you have a number in your head that you're mad at, might as well just go ahead and erase it, because, well, here soon it'll probably be somebody else. I love this. It reminds me of the traditional American and Australian short track Saturday night sort of racing, where it's fast and it's you get many races in one evening. And I love that. I love that mixed bag. And this second race, despite what we saw in the first one, could be completely different.
It very much could be, and it's going to be it's going to be interesting because we have that new qualifying session. There's no guarantee that the two Hondas will end up on the front row of the grid again. We could see an entirely different front row on the grid. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all does play out, Jesse. I agree. It's going to be quite intriguing to see. I mean, it is entirely possible we do get the same front row, but nothing is certain in sim racing, and it is quite nice as we still have the standings for the results from race 1 actually up on screen right now. So we've been looking at those. Let's have a bit of a run through them, Jesse. We had a little look at the top 10. Soldatov in 11th, Verstappen 12th, Harry Conway 13th, actually. Not a bad result for him. Georges in 14th, Clements 15th, Bellassane in 16th place. Jardia finished down in 17th after his penalty was added on to the end of his race. Tavrain in 18th, Azevedo in 19th, and then Kieran Prendergast obviously rounding out the top 20. Of course, he won't score points tonight, and Darren King didn't do too well in the first race either. I think he was one of the drivers that caught a drive-through at the start, was he, Jesse?
No, I think
No, he was turned around at the Crocodiles.
That's correct. Yes,
he was turned around
Prendergast is the one that caught the penalty, and King got spun by another driver. I just want to talk about Soldatov for a second. I was just told by a lovely member in chat that Soldatov drove from 27th to 11th in that 30-minute race. Now that is moving along. Just a moment here before we go live for qualifying for race number 2. RCI would like to thank all of its partners: Race Department, AK Informatica, Speed Labs, and Sim Racing GP. Thank you for everything you do to help us bring this race to everyone out there. Thank you all for being with us on your Friday evening, watching some fantastic GT3 World Championship action from Kyalami. And it's been great so far. Thrills, chills, and spills. And we expect nothing more, nothing less from the second race. I'm Jesse Lee. I am here with Ryan Gill, Nick Setnick behind the cameras giving us the direction. And of course, a big shout out and thank you to all of our stewards taking time out of their Friday evening to make sure this race is ran as cleanly and as efficiently as possible. And right now, we are resetting for the qualifying. And there we have it, in fact, another 10-minute session. Qualifying number 2, as noted by the top of the screen. Nearly 31 cars thereabout, all screaming out of pit road, trying to get the best position as they jockey and vie for a spot to belong on the racetrack. Already racing each other on an outlap, trying to get the best position in spacing. Will we see a Honda front row lockout again? I don't know. But one thing's for sure, there is a sense of urgency with a tiny 10-minute session. We heard a couple of cars, including Boothby in that first qualifying session, had to reset to pit road, which essentially ate up nearly 2.5, 4 minutes of his qualifying session and may have changed what he could have possibly done. We hear that some of these drivers run their best times on their second or third lap around this place. Of course, it's very much dependent on your setup and very much dependent on what car you're driving. But either way, all 31 participants out on the track, warming up the tires, looking for an open space. Actually, we do have about 4 or 5 cars that haven't left pit road yet, and some of them now in the clear space are going. But I can kind of see why you would try to get out there as quickly as possible, because if you don't, again, like, look, the guys that are leaving pit road now, they've wasted 1.5 minutes. So that's pretty much a lap that they will not get now. So I see why you'd leave early, and I can see the strategy of waiting for a clearer track.
Well, either way, one thing that is for sure is that João Cavaca will be the first driver to start a qualifying lap for the second qualifying session, much like he did in the first qualifying session, although he's got Hool right on the back of him for the start of this second qualifying session.
Slipstream, bro.
Well, the slipstream only works if you don't get held up by the car in front, so that's something that the McLaren's going to have to watch out for. But either way, João Cavaca continues on his way. You just saw Ismail Lebrec, and you can actually just see him there at the bottom of your screen going past, the winner from race 1. He'll be hoping to replicate his qualifying performance in race 2, or in qualifying 2, sorry. And of course his performance from race 1 in race 2. And João Cavaca looking very, very good on his lap time at the moment. The McLaren not so much, going off track. That's most likely an invalidated lap time now, so the McLaren will back off as he does, and we'll look to see if they can reset and get a much better lap. They have a bit of space in between them to kind of just back off slightly, refocus a bit, but João Cavaca still fully committed to getting this lap done in the number 33 Ferrari. Didn't have a great first race, but that's the fantastic thing about running 2 sprint races here tonight, is that you can look forward to the second one and try and right the wrongs, as it were, and get a good result on the board. Only half points for each race here this evening. So here is João Cavaca towards the end of his first lap. He'd set a 1:41.0 for his first lap in qualifying 1. What is it going to be this time? It's a 1:41.3, 3/10 slower than the first lap. Georges will set a 1:41.0. Boothby will immediately beat that with a 1:40.962. Ferrari's getting the laps done nice and early, and it seems like George Boothby has won the first round of banker laps in the qualifying session. 6 minutes to go, but the two NSX boys still yet to finish their laps, Jesse.
Yeah, and they probably are a little confident, Macaulay and Lebrec, at this moment. I would be too, because I think their pole times were about a 40.5, 40.6, somewhere in there. So if this is what Boothby and Jose Jorge's and still Vason have, then they know they have a little extra something in there. So be interesting to see what they are capable of. All that being said, Boothby and Jorge, pretty much everybody, folks, inside the top 10 right now is going quicker, with the exception of Lada, who I think, no, he's still going around. He's just matching his previous lap times. So everybody going quicker. That's what I was talking about earlier. I think most of these guys are favoring the second or even the third lap on their tires for the quickest run. But of course, all that means, Ryan, is you can't mess up. You can't at this point, you can't reset because you won't get to that second or third lap. You have what you have, and you have to make it count.
So Ismail Lebrec goes provisional pole, and then that's immediately beaten by Georges, who is immediately beaten by George Boothby, the Ferrari boys this time, meaning business, it seems.
Look at that.
They're not too happy about the two NSXs taking pole position in the first race, and they've decided that they want to have a say about that. But Carsten's going to have a say about it in his Bentley as well. He's thrown that onto the front row of the grid. Lebrec down to 6th, and Joe McCauley. Has Joe McCauley actually got a lap time on the board yet? I'm looking down the order. No, he has. He has got one. It's a very slow lap though, so a mistake made from Joe McCauley on his banker lap indeed. So, unfortunate for him, he's going to have to go again. But George Boothby sits as provisional pole sitter, and Carsten's been beaten to the front row by Bouquet, trading blows for who can get onto the front row of the grid. This is exactly what we want to see, Jesse.
Yeah, this is ultra competitive. This is kind of what we expected. And Boothby with that 40.608, there's still a little bit of time left out there for anybody. It's anybody's game. Play on with 3.5 minutes to go in this session as Joe McCauley kicks in the front door with a 40.3, the fastest lap so far. 2/10, actually a quarter of a second quicker than anyone else. Now only 2/10 of a second quicker than Ismail Lebrec, and the Hondas are coming back.
So
we'll have to see.
Joe McCauley and Ismail Lebrec, meaning business.
We'll have to see if the Ferraris can answer back here, Ryan.
Well, we will have to see. And George Boothby is up on his lap time at the moment. He's just started a new lap, actually. Up fractionally. Ismail Lebrec is also up on his lap time as well by about 1/10 of a second. So he could potentially take that pole position back off of, or provisional pole back off of Joe McCauley. Of course, it was Joe McCauley that took the pole position for the first qualifying session. But he didn't do too well in the race, did it? As Ismail Lebrec beat him on the start, and you kind of wonder.
Speaking of Ismail Lebrec,
if you kind of think that Ismail Lebrec might be happy starting second again, you know, if that's the kind of start he can replicate here. So we'll see how he goes. But Ismail Lebrec looking absolutely fine at the moment. He needs to find just over 2/10 of a second to take that provisional pole away.
Oh, and he's done it, Ryan.
Has he done it? Has he invalidated his lap? I don't think he has. He's going to be keeping it up, but
there it is. There it is.
Goes wide at Cheetah, and there's Joe McCauley in the background, funny enough.
He's going to get one more, and this is important. He has the speed, guys, to make this pole run, but I think he just invalidated his lap. Yes, indeed, he did. But that lap before that point, that was nearly a quarter of a second quicker. That would have been enough for pole. He's got this lap. He knows this is his last chance. And look at still Vason here, all the way outside the top 10. I don't know if I would have expected that. Same thing with Grant Smith out of the top 10.
This is what we meant by, the grid could be drastically different from one race to another. And that's what the qualifying session could show us. George Boothby up in third. Here is Milton Steele-Vason. He's in 13th place at the moment. Crosses the line, goes up to 11th. Not enough. Ismail Lebrec has backed off of his lap, Jesse.
Oh, what I think happened is he was pushing because he had, once again, the time in the bank, and I think he just pushed a little bit too hard and made a mistake again, Ryan. I think that's going to do it for him in qualifying. But like you said, I'm not too sure he cares if he starts first or second.
No, but something he might care about is the fact that George Boothby has just started his final lap of qualifying, and George Boothby, he, he's set some serious pace so far in the second qualifying session, and I think he fancies a chance at potentially getting his Ferrari on the front row of the grid, and that's something Ismail Lebrec is going to have to be concerned about. It's something that Joe McCauley is going to be keeping an eye on as well. It's only about half a tenth between the likes of Lebrec and Boothby for who can be on that front row of the grid. Looking a bit further down, loads of people improving their times at the moment. Quite a few people left in the garage, though, as qualifying has officially come to an end. Everyone going to be finishing up their laps this time round, but we're going to stay with the 666 of George Boothby. He's dead level at the moment, actually now starting to improve as he works his way up towards Leocott. If he can find a tenth, if he can find half a tenth, he can get himself onto the front row, but he's had a bit of a slide. Coming out of Leocop, he's lost time. He needs to gain it in the Crocodiles, Cheetah, or Ingwe. So here we are, George Boothby in towards the Crocodiles. It's 3 corners for him to go. Has he gained time? Has he invalidated his lap? No, I think he's managed to keep it on the track. And he's still going here, George Boothby. He still thinks there's a chance into the final corner. How much time?
Oh, he gained a lot.
Boothby gain. He's gained time on the entry. He's lost it on the exit. He comes up towards the timing line. He can't quite do it. But in all of the melee, James Parker, who we weren't watching, has put his Aston Martin on the front row.
That Coach Dave Academy car slipped in there with that 888 and got it done. He very nearly took the pole position by 1/10. Ismail Lebrec will now start on the inside behind McCauley this time. James Parker on the front row, and Parker's sitting there going, that's more like it.
Yep, and well, this is what we said about the the race could be drastically different from one race to another, and that's going to be something that we're going to see here now with Joe McCauley on pole position again, but he hasn't got his fellow NSX partner alongside him on the front row. He's got his teammate for the World Tour. Actually, he'll be racing in the same car as James Parker for the nearly on pace Coach Dave Academy car next week for the 24 Hours of Kyalami. So the two of them, rivals today, teammates next week. It's funny how everything can change in such a short space of time, but I'm sure they're going to be looking forward to it either way. Of course, Lebrec and Boothby on the second row of the grid. It's an all Porsche third row of the grid with Bouquet and Grant Smith, Georges and Simard all the way down in 8th place. Karsten and Frischel rounding out the top 10. So Valentin Barrier's done much better in his second qualifying session, Jesse. He has managed to actually set a lap time. He's in 18th place. And something that I'm kind of looking at here.
You're looking at Jardier, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm looking for Jardier. Yeah. Where is Jardier?
He's 24th, I think. Jardier, he's 24th on my timing board. Here's the thing. He set a lap that was off the pace somewhere in the high 20s. He went into pit road, made some changes, and came back out, and he improved, but not by a ton. So don't know if something's going on with the number 39 Mercedes or exactly what has happened there. The other big surprise is the 316. We're looking at him here of Willamont could do no better than 20th in qualifying this time around.
So a lot of people in different places for the start of race 2. Billy Octane all the way down in 31st place. Harry Conway 28th. The two Triple R boys haven't quite had a great qualifying too. So quite a few people out of place from the first race, and this is why the second qualifying session has kind of turned things on its head. We had the chance of a identical race to race one if the qualifying order was the same as it is in the Ferrari Evo Cup, finishing on Monday. But of course, not for this one. We have those two separate qualifying sessions, and we are just over 2 minutes away from getting this second race underway. So, Jesse, we have some time on our hands. Do we want to talk about predictions again? Whilst we have a bit of a chance now that the grid's changed up a bit. What are you thinking this time? Have you still got your money on Philippe Samard in the Aston Martin?
No, Joe McCauley's going to win this race. I think Lebrec is going to get held up with James Parker racing each other. I think Lebrec is the one that has the most pace, but just he wasn't able to quite do it in qualifying. So I still think Lebrec's going to have the pace, but I think he's going to get held up by a great racer in James Parker, and I think that's going to hand the race to Joe McCauley as long as he can stay calm, cool, and collected and pound out lap times for the first 15 minutes. I think he's going to walk away with the win here.
Well, interesting. I think I don't want to be the kind of guy that goes for the same thing twice, Jesse.
Hmm.
But you know what? Ismail Lebrec looked good in that first race. He really did. He did all he needed to do at the start. Got around Joe McCauley right at the start, and just controlled the gap, and then started growing it slowly and steadily. Didn't really make any mistakes that we saw on camera, anyway. So did very, very well, and obviously starting third at the moment. Not ideal for him. But you know what? I'm kind of confident he can he can pull off another victory here today. I think Ismail Lebrec can take those full race points, so he's going to be my pick for race 2. Of course, we have some more Banjordi in the chat. Jordan Grant Smith starting 6th, so another decent qualifying session for Jordan Grant Smith, actually, and has the chance to potentially pick up another podium here today.
Well, what I'm paying attention to here is we all know Ishmael Lebrec knows the move down into turn 2 to make the pass. But was James Parker paying attention to the move made on McCauley into turn 2, I wonder? And will he have something to say about it? Of course, if I was fielding a fantasy esports team, there'd be a few people in front of James Parker that I would draft. So he definitely has the knowledge and the ability to make this work. And he also has the speed, as he proved in qualifying. It's going to all be on McCauley to not allow what happened last time to occur here again. It's a double podium day for McCauley, but honestly, you would have to feel a little bit empty if you couldn't convert at least one of those into wins, Ryan.
Yeah, it would suck to get 2 pole positions on the same evening in different qualifying sessions and then not win either of the races. And Joe McCauley, he needs all the points he can get, remember. I mean, he had a really bad race last week at Spa and didn't really pick up many points at all. So, he's in the situation now if he needs as many points as he can get towards the end of this championship. If he's going to go for a title fight, I mean, he basically had an almost 0 points round, an almost DNF round last week. So to recover from that, you really, really do need to get some serious points on the board, and you're going to need some wins in there. It's it's just going to be one of those things. I don't think we've ever had someone win a championship at an RCI event without winning a race. I will have to double check for clarification on that
now,
one.
I know for a fact, Ryan, that happened at RLM, but at RCI, I don't think
that did happen at RLM, yes. The only one that comes to mind is the McLaren Masters Cup that Bart Matcher won in the 720S class. I don't remember if he won a race or not. I will have to double check that one. But either way, we'll come back to that one when it's much more relevant, and we will start to see the cars line up in 2x2 formation. James Parker now on the front row of the grid. Ismail Lebrec, like you said, Jesse, he knew exactly what to do to get around Joe McCauley. James Parker, not a novice to sim racing by any means. I'm pretty sure he knows the way around this circuit, and he'll be very familiar with some of the drivers starting around him. But here we go then, 2x2. We'll be hoping that less drivers get caught out with a drive-through penalty at the start of the race this time round. It was 3 drivers last time. We'll be hoping it's no one this time around, and they were kind of hoping that the 1.7 would have fixed, the 1.7 update would have fixed this, but maybe it is still an issue. But anyway, round the final corner we go. Joe McCauley, James Parker, 2 Brits on the front row. It's a Scotsman and an Englishman, to be specific. They've got a Canadian behind them as well. And there we go. We're at the start of the race, and more drivers caught out. 3 drivers picking up drive-through penalties again. But look at the start for Joe McCauley and Ismail Lebrec as we come down towards turn 2. Ismail Lebrec's going to be on the inside of turn 2, and he's going to get around James Parker. And
that's
James
not good
Parker
for McCauley.
Not doing what James Parker needed to do at the start of the race, and now Joe McCauley has the race 1 winner right on his heels.
Well, I tell you one thing, you just go ahead and cue up the Jaws music, because that is not what McCauley wanted to see. He wanted to see James Parker at least hold up Lebrec ever so slightly. That did not happen in the slightest. Lebrec able to convert that 3rd place starting position into 2nd place on the road, and he is right up the back of that Honda, and that is going to end up being cueing the Jaws music at least here for the first few laps. We'll have to see if McCauley can pull away in the same fashion that Lebrec did. Remember, it took him 15 minutes to get 1 second. Lebrec on McCauley last time, and now the running order is reversed as nearly everyone gets away cleanly on that lap. We had 3 drivers get pipped for starting procedure violations as the pass is already being made right here. Side by side they go. It looks like Lebrec's on the inside. He's going to have it. There's going to be a touch, and they both go spinning. McCauley and Lebrec go spinning. James Parker goes through melee and crazy. Oh my goodness. Can you believe that, Ryan Gill?
It's a Hamilton and Rosberg situation from Barcelona in Formula One all the way back in 2016, but it's 2 Hondas at Kyalami on the first lap of the race, both of them in the wall. Joe McCauley less damaged, it seems, of the 2 NSX cars, but no doubt there, the 2 of them coming together in the worst way imaginable. And I tell you what, it's not going to be an NSX winning this race unless Herbert Froschel can come through with an absolute masterclass. But James Parker has been gifted a lead that he most definitely had lost at the start of the race.
Well, this isn't over. Grant Smith, #BlameJordy, is hungry like the wolf, and he could potentially be a threat to win this race, but catastrophic. How many times, Ryan Gill, have we seen a move like that not come off in Cheetah? And here it is again, another example.
2 into 1 in Cheetah just does not go unless someone is willing to give way. Someone has to concede time
Speaking
and position
of
somehow. Georgia's not too keen on giving way to Samad, it seems, as these guys go toe-to-toe down mineshaft and towards the Crocodiles. I was speaking of Herbert Froschel, and there he is as well in the kind of neon yellow, and he's lost out now because he's gone wide, and that's going to allow Karsten through, and Joe McCauley, the recovering Joe McCauley, coming through as well. And Froschel is at risk of losing more positions, as here comes Darren King, who's had a much better start to his 2nd race. And I think they've also got the Aston Martin of Steel Vason there as well. Froschel trying to do everything he can. And now, is he going to try and get back past Joe McCauley? It's Honda versus Honda again. It's not the same 2 drivers.
Oh,
But
dear.
this time, Joe McCauley, is he going to give way? And he's
Oh,
going to get turned
no!
around!
Again! For the second time in as many laps, Joe McCauley goes for a spin, this time in turn 2. Honda versus Honda, but that's not where the accident came from. He's going to get hit here by the Ferrari, the 38 Ferrari of, I think is that Jardier?
It's Darren King in the Ferrari.
It's Darren King, excuse me. Of course it is Darren King. That's absolutely just abysmal for Joe McCauley. That is by far and away the worst start that you could have ever have imagined. And by the way, the number 64 of Soldatov has 1 lap to come in to pit for that start violation, else he will be disqualified from this race. And for a championship, that's not something he'd be interested in. So I would imagine he would come in this time, but absolutely chaotic start to this race.
Well, it was a perfect start for the Hondas in race 1. Could be anything but, and there is that is
that's Prendergast.
That is Prendergast. It's so Darren King went spinning in race 1. Prendergast has gone in race 2. So both of the guest drivers tonight, or reserve drivers, not really having the greatest evening. They will kind of be glad they're not picking up points, to be honest, but. Now here's Karsten on Georges. The Bentley going to go side by side with the Ferrari. He's got the inside line. He looks to be later on the brakes, and he'll get the move done nice and clean into turn 2. And my word, Jesse, 6 minutes of this race have almost gone past already. And I still feel like we're on the first lap.
By the way, Jardier started near the back of this race. He's in 11th, Ryan. How in the world?
So
how's he done that?
Everything is being thrown out of the window. Meanwhile, whilst we're all having an absolute panic about everything that's happening here, James Parker does still lead from Jordan Grantsmith. He's only half a second behind him, by the way. Hashtag ban Geordie in the chat. You might be in for a Geordie win if he can keep up this kind of pace, if he can pressure James Parker into a mistake. Easier said than done. Georges has got a drive-through penalty. I'm not entirely sure if that was steward given or if that's track limits. If it's track limits, that's incredibly early on to pick up a drive-through.
Would you, speaking of stewards, would you like to hear this? That lap 2 incident into turn 2 that we witnessed between the 18 and the 38, no further action.
Well, that's going to be interesting discussion later on, but obviously the stewards, they see all the angles, they see everything that we don't see. We only get to see it once or maybe twice if we're lucky. But unfortunately, for the likes of Joe McCauley, there'll be no penalty coming out for that incident. So he's just going to have to live with what is. And Ismail Lebrec down in 22nd place. It's just not gone. And Joe McCauley is last, by the way. It's not gone
it unraveled.
the way that they would have liked it to go. And here comes Piffett as well in the Lexus. Ismail Lebrec's day is looking to get worse. George is coming out of the pit lane. He's caught up in all this as well. Slight tap from Lebrec. They're going to go 3 wide. That doesn't work. That doesn't work into the Yuxke suite.
Oh, penalty incoming for take your pick. Roll the dice. This is just aggressive driving. All of these drivers here had their race impacted one way or another. They're all just trying to pick up positions, and 3 wide here is absolutely never going to work, and just a massive crash, additional damage to every single car. And that's what I started the show. We talked about it. The racing is going to get harder. The anticipation is going to go up, and the patience are going to go out the window. And Ryan, that's what you saw.
You asked me earlier on, do you think the second race will be scrappier?
I did ask that. Yeah.
I mean, I was hoping it wouldn't be. These are the pro drivers. This is the top split, and these are names that plenty of people know throughout the ACC community, but quite a few of them not really doing themselves any justice in favors tonight. I mean, I don't think I'm too far out of saying it's been a bit embarrassing for a few people out here tonight with some of the incidents, and there are going to be penalties given out over the course of this race, no doubt. You can be guaranteed of that one. Here is Vanak, and he's going to be on the outside of Azevedo down towards turn 2, but the Porsche not quite going to be able to have the pace to get round the Ferrari on that occasion. He'll stay 16th place. Going to have a look on the inside of turn 4, but thinks better of it this time round. And, well,
Oh, look at this.
there is a very sad Joe McCauley pulling over on the side of the track, and I think that's probably day done for him.
Yeah, something amiss here on the car. It's still going. No, he's going to get it back going, but something there amiss on the number 18. We'll see exactly what happened here. Does he just stop? I think he's just going to stop. Yeah, he's going to pull off to the right-hand side before they get to sunset, and he's just going to kind of... So something amiss there, I would assume, in the cockpit. And he pulls even further off. Yeah, he's trying to fix something. So something up there, but he gets it fixed and rejoins the race. But what has already been a difficult day will not get any easier for Joe McCauley in the 18. Jose Jorge is in the pit road, and that's not usual. He served his drive-through penalty earlier, which I think he's actually going to either sit there or retire the car.
His drive-through wasn't for a his drive-through wasn't for an incident, though. I don't think, and it wasn't for a race start infraction. I don't believe either. I don't think he was one of the drivers that got a start.
No, Ryan, you're right. It wasn't
at the start, so I can only assume that that's track limits. But either way, Vanak is going to have another go down here into turn 2, and Azevedo, very good defending there from the Ferrari, managing to keep the Porsche at bay. And this is the kind of racing that we want to see, isn't it, Jesse? So
yes.
Some nice, clean, close but reserved racing between some of these guys here tonight. And, well, we haven't seen some of that from some of these other guys here tonight. And it all started, Jesse, with the two Hondas taking each other out through Cheetah, didn't it? That's what kicked all of this off.
Do you know what? I feel semi-responsible for that, because for the first race, I said that exact thing was going to happen. Turns out I just had the wrong race. I need to calibrate my crystal ball, I think. But for those of you out there catching an RCI race for the first time, first of all, hello. Why not like and subscribe for more chaotic racing content? But it's so out of character for a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys are esports drivers or esports caliber, and it's not... They don't usually race like that, and we don't usually have races like that. In fact, I can count the chaotic sort of crash-filled races that we've ever had here at RCI on one hand. It's so very out of character for the drivers, the teams, and RCI in general to have a race like that. And all this is doing is creating more work for the stewards who are... Cameron is handing me slips of paper like it's the 1930s stock exchange. This is insane, and they're not done. I still see them in the other booth with papers flying.
I was going to say that they're coming faster out of the printer than he can sign them off at this rate. And,
indeed.
It's not really what you want
Vanak
to see.
Meanwhile,
Vanak,
place?
Is he finally going to get this place done on the Ferrari?
No!
And it
Another
was going
spin.
so well. It was going
that's
so
dangerous.
well. It was all clean, and Azevedo rolling backwards across the track. The two McLarens managed to avoid the chaos. But this was going so clean. This was going so well. And then 2 into 1 doesn't go at Yuxke Sweep. And that's a Ferrari around. A Porsche losing time. Harry Conway and Billy Octane were the two drivers there having to avoid all of that. And I think
I don't know how they missed it.
Prendergast might have been involved in all of that as well. Meanwhile, Prendergast has picked up a drive-through penalty for an incident with Valentin Barrier and car 316. Jesse, I've lost track. Which is car 316?
Ryan, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm just going to read you everything Cameron's handed me to this point. Cameron, of course, the chief steward tonight, or either that or he's race control. He's one of the two, but he's the one signing off on the papers. So drive-through penalty for the 33 for a lap 1 incident. involving the 64 and the 58. 5-second penalty for the 58 for a lap 1 incident with the 88. A 15-second penalties for the 58. That's 20 seconds in total for a accident on the subsequent turn on lap 1 with the 88 again. So that's 20 seconds penalties for the 58. A warning for the 777 for the earlier incident we saw. A drive-through for car number 10 for the lap 2 3-wide incident with 316 in the 72. And a warning for the 102 for an incident with the 33 on lap 2. So they're only on lap 2, and they're still busy getting these incidences stewarded. So strap in. It's going to be a long 15 minutes.
This is one of those occasions where someone says to me, Ryan, why don't you do stewarding at RCI? It's because I'm aware of times like this where I can look over at that stewarding box at the moment, and I mean, Jesse, we're glad enough that the commentary box gets its own separate room from the steward's booth, because right now there are pencils and papers flying. It's chaos in there at the moment. There's shouting going on in 3 different languages, and I'm pretty sure none of them are South African. And, you know, it's all chaos here tonight. And Fabian Piffett for Team Fordzilla, he's one of the guys that's been involved in some of the chaos here tonight. He was one of the drivers who was going 3 wide into the Yuxke Sweep. Meanwhile, up at the front, you may have forgotten that there's still a race win to be decided here tonight with 14.5 minutes to go. But James Parker does still lead the race from Grant Smith, and Boothby has joined in now with Bouquet on the back of them.
Yeah, they're all within a second of each other now. I'm not sure if Parker is holding these guys up or they're just all incredibly similarly paced. But either way, we've got 4 cars that are all within a second. There they are in your picture. In fact, you can see Samard in the background there as well, who is joining this fight. So if you're Jordan Grant Smith now, you have to be thinking about making this move whenever you get an opportunity, because Boothby's behind him. Bouquet is not going to hang out behind Boothby, and Samard, well, we all know Samard, and when he catches up, he is going to be in the business of picking up spots too. So it's calculated moves is what we're looking for here. And certainly Parker in the driver's seat. You talked about having the bigger car that you could be more defensive with. In that case, advantage to Parker, but Grant Smith has shown an incredible pace here at Kyalami today. But Boothby as well, he picked up a ton of spots as we documented in that first race, and I think he could potentially get up there and mix it up with them as well. But this is sort of how it's been, Ryan, for the past, 5 minutes. It's been about this gap between these 3 cars. So anything here is possible with 13 minutes to go as we watch Valentin Berrier make up a spot on, his sort of teammate, I guess.
Just thinking about Jordan Grant Smith at the moment, he's probably thinking to himself that it might be better to just sit back and take a second place if he can. Obviously, he didn't have a great result in round 1 at Spa. Managed to pick up a podium in race 1. Has the chance to pick up a podium in race 2. Maybe not worth risking that podium for a win if he's looking for a consistent result on the board, especially with James Parker. You know James Parker is going to fight you hard for every inch of the track, and I'm sure that Jordan Grant Smith can do very much the same. But maybe just going to think about it a bit more. Maybe he's going to try and pressure Parker into a mistake like he did with Willamot in the first race. 12 minutes to go, we'll have to see. Meanwhile, Soldatov making up a place on Ismail Lebrec. The Honda boys just trying to recover whatever they can from this race. Joe McCauley has pulled into the pit lane, by the way, and that is going to be a retirement for the Scotsman. And it is it was all smiles before the race between the 2 Honda boys. I'm not too sure if they'll want to see each other after the race here today, Jesse.
All I have to say is the sort of drivers chat here at RCI for this championship is going to need some moderating, I think, here in about 11 and a half minutes, Ryan, because
Someone's gonna need the hammer ready.
there have been some bent fenders and some bent feelings here tonight in South Africa, and again, it's so unlike these guys, and it's so unlike the racing that we're used to. We're used to this nice, clean, and very, very professional sort of way of going about things, but this track is a lovely track. It's one of my favorite tracks that there is. World-class venue. It's excellent what they've done with it, but also it is narrow and it will lead to mistakes and heartbreak. And we certainly seen that here today. I don't expect the 24. I don't expect our longer races to be anything like this, though. But I think a lot of this is the tight confines of the track, as Piffet trying to make the pass here as well. Looking like he will be given the quarter here, as Lebrec has pretty much backed off, in my opinion. He realizes he's incredibly damaged. He's trying to just see the checkered flag here today. But I just think that a combination of the narrowness of the track, the ability for passing here is higher than most places. And that with a short 30-minute race, it has ratcheted up the tension, I think, is what has occurred here tonight. But that'll be very little solace for anybody who's been involved in an incident here tonight, as there will be something to atone for. And I think some of these guys out here have ruined their chance at winning this championship, but they've also maybe ruined some friendships as well.
Yeah, and I'm partially left thinking, what, maybe the format of the races here tonight, with people not having a great first race, and that second race carries more pressure on it to get a good result, because you didn't do quite well in the first race. You said it yourself. You were kind of thinking maybe the second race would be more scrappy. I'm just left thinking now, with the British GT DLC having been confirmed and released in time for our championship, we've got Snetterton and Donington on the calendar. And, well, let's just say some of these moves here tonight aren't going to go down too well at Snetterton. They'll be a bit more forgiving at Donington Park, but I can tell you the tight and tricky nature of Snetterton is not going to be too forgiving for some of the moves that we've seen here tonight. But we'll have a look at the further penalty reports as we get a bit further into this race. 8.5 minutes to go. Grant Smith still on the back of James Parker, not looking to make any risky moves. By the looks of it, Grant Smith in a race that has been surrounded by chaos, he seems like the coolest man on track at the moment, doesn't he? Seems pretty relaxed.
Yeah, I would have to say so. That's sort of what I get from Jordy. He's very smooth, and he's very calm, and he's typically not the one I expect to make a mistake. I don't think I've ever actually seen him make an incredibly large mistake. And same thing with James Parker. This is nothing new to James Parker. He's used to leading races like this, close races where he's being chased down, and you don't see any crazy moves or anything that would tell me that he's mirror driving at all. He's running his race. He realizes there's a bunch of cars back there, but see, he's not defending. He knows they're right there, but he's getting his line into and out of every corner. And I think part of that is because Grant Smith's allowing that to happen. But Grant Smith also paying attention to Boothby behind him. So, it's a race like this, you almost have to have ice water running through your veins.
So the race carries on, and further down the grid, Darren King trying to find his way past Willamot, who finds himself behind the likes of Jaroslav Honzik. Jardier up to 10th in this race. Started all the way down in 24th, so he's had a good race so far. 14 places gained.
Wow. So 64 car was given a 15-second penalty for essentially causing an incident and ignoring a yellow flag or something like that. Racing incident between the 33 and the 102. Racing incident between the 107 and the 33. Warning for car 287 for an incident with the 962. 122 racing incident. Racing incident between the 195 and the 67. Racing incident between the 67 and the 195. I believe that was the same incident reviewed twice. And a racing incident between the 18 and the 67. Those are the things that have came through. So basically, they have deemed that lap one incident that took out both Hondas a racing incident. Thoughts, Ryan?
Well, I mean, I racing incident. I guess I can understand it. I mean, neither of them particularly gained anything out of the incident, and I mean, we knew right from the start, once we saw two cars going side by side into Cheetah, it just wasn't going to work. You know, we've seen that before. I'm pretty sure Joe McCauley and Ismail Lebrecht have both
Darren
seen it
King!
before, as well as Darren King. And he's
no!
tapped Willem Martin. He's managed to turn him back around, actually, in credit to him. And will not take the place. Willem will lose a position to Steele Vason.
You just could tell this wasn't going to come off.
Yeah, a bit ambitious there from Darren King. Willamot even goes slightly wide to try and avoid it, but just not wide enough. And
Darren King, a gentleman, if nothing else, though. He spins it back around.
Spins it back around and waits to make sure that he doesn't gain the place as well. So some good courtesy there from Darren King. But yeah, I mean, the Ismail Lebrecht, Joe McCauley incident, I mean, a racing incident is understandable. From the perspectives that we saw, at least. I don't think Ismail Lebrecht and Joe McCauley will think it's a racing incident.
Probably not.
For sure, but when you have two sides of a coin, and you know, and neither one wants to accept the other's opinion, sometimes you have to find a middle ground, and you know, I think neither of them gave way, and I think that was the reason for the incident. And in that kind of situation, when you have two people doing something and neither of them really wants to give each other the room, you've got to pin the blame on both drivers. I think maybe it was one person's fault more than another, but at the end of the day, either of them could have given way. Neither of them chose to give way, and well, we know the result.
And of course, if there's any question why the stewards decided one way or another, the drivers can request an explanation. That's kind of what they are for. But yeah, I gotta say, for a race that has been as scrappy as it has been, we could be on for a fantastic finish here in about 4 minutes between these 3, 4, maybe even 5 drivers here up front. And one thing's for sure, Grant Smith is not willing to throw this away. Well, I wonder, too, if Boothby gives Grant Smith a look down the inside, would Grant Smith just be content to let him go by, knowing that he stands to gain a lot here in this race? And oh, by the way, this is exactly, if James Parker can pull this off and win, this is exactly what James Parker needs, because Parker, again, had that terrible finish in the first race, came in as the points leader. So this is what he needs. If he can pull off a win here as Grant Smith goes all the way into the dirt, into Cheetah, and that's going to put him back into the clutches of Boothby. Boothby now going to the inside, to the outside. He's going to try and go around the long way into turn 2 as we go through turn 1, the kink. Can he pull this off for second place? Meanwhile, James Parker continuing to get away up front as these two finally do battle. Looks all clean to me through turn 2. And now it's looking like it's going to be Grant Smith who will defend that position. Lovely. But now Boothby back into the clutches of Bouquet.
Now that's the kind of racing that we do like to see, and
what we're used to.
It is what we're used to, and it is very nice to see. And Grant Smith managing to hold on to that second place, and George Boothby now finding himself slightly under pressure from the likes of Bouquet. And Simard has now obviously he's taking a look at that as well, thinking he could potentially get up in on this as well. He started in 8th place, so he's gained 3 places from the start. Obviously 2 of those would have been Ismail Lebrecht and Joe McCauley rather taking each other out of the race. 5-second penalty for car number 195. And that is Piffer in the Lexus. I think maybe that was for the 3 wide incident that we saw at the Yuxcase sweep. How long ago was that, Jesse Lee, as we've only got a minute and a half of the race to go as the Porsche of Bouquet right on the back of George Boothby. The 666 under pressure. This is one of the problems you have, is that if you try and make an overtake, it doesn't come off. You leave yourself so vulnerable to the driver behind. And, well, George Boothby manages to defend it this time round. And James Parker now has a gap and is now feeling a lot more comfortable about himself as he enters the final lap of the race. This will be the last time round. Checkered flag will come out the next time James Parker comes to the line. So the focus is here on the podium positions. It's currently Grant Smith from Boothby in the top 3. Bouquet and Samard just outside. Will the positions stay the same as the penalties continue to come out?
Oh, they're going to keep coming.
And I think
they're only on lap 5.
There might be some post-race penalties coming out, to be honest, with the way this is going. But either way, these drivers will continue on riding the curbs so aggressively around here. And Grant Smith, Boothby, they've just got to make sure that they don't make any mistakes. Mistakes now is essentially you lose the podium, you lose the position you're in. And they've got to make sure that they don't do that. Even for James Parker, who's leading the race, he's got a 1.3 second gap, probably find himself in the most comfortable spot he's been in all race long, all evening long even. But even he has to keep his toes about him. The timer has run out. Bouquet on the back. Jordan Grant Smith having gone wide. That'll be a track limit infringement, no doubt. Not enough to give him a drive-through penalty. Probably doesn't have enough warnings at this stage into the final corner. Grant Smith, he's going to be wide, but he still have the drive to keep that second place. James Parker wins the second race of the evening. Grant Smith picks up a second podium, and Boothby will round out the top 3. Bouquet and Simard in the top 5. Karsten, Frischel, Keeble, and Tavrayan in the top 9. And of course, Jardier will round out the top 10 from Steel Vason. And a rather embarrassing race from a driving standards point comes to an end. And unfortunately for the stewards, it's not going to be a short end to tonight.
And just to keep updating as the final cars come across the line, I'll pick up where I left off. 15-second penalty and a warning for the number 38 for an incident involving the 18. 15 seconds for the 102 car for an incident involving the 287. 5-second penalty for the 195 incident involving the 88. 5-second penalty for the 287 for an incident involving the 122. Racing incident for the 195 and the 8. Warning for the 287 for an incident with the 123. And they're only halfway into the race, is how insane that race was. That is lap 9 that they're on, Ryan.
Yeah, not great from them, but you can see the final race standings for race 2. James Parker obviously taking that win, 1.8 seconds in the end from Jordan Grant Smith and George Boothby rounding out the podium. So some good points tonight for a few of these drivers out there. Grant Smith, Bouquet, and Simard will be picking up some very nice points as they
indeed
consistently finished high up the grid, but everyone else it'll be a night of reflectment.
It's, you know what it is going to be, Ryan? It's going to be a night of me very quickly popping some popcorn and going to watch this driver's chat is what's going to happen.
For some people, maybe, but I think a lot of the drivers here tonight, they definitely have a lot to answer to themselves and to other people as well. And I think, I think the admins might have to step in tonight and kind of set things straight, because this isn't the kind of racing that we accept around here, and obviously the stewards can barely keep up tonight. So we'll see how it all goes from here. But if you're looking for more RCI racing, hopefully not what you saw in the second race here tonight, but if you're looking for more exciting action, well, we do have qualifying taking place for the 24 Hours of Kyalami for the World Tour. You will be, apparently, as far as I've heard. So we'll be right back here tomorrow. We'll also have the Porsche Battle going on here at Kyalami as well. Porsche Cup cars and Porsche GT4s in that race. Then we'll be back on Monday, of course, with the conclusion of the 488 Evo Cup. That's going to be at Imola. Sam Wright and George Smith in the box, as they have been for the first 2 races of that miniature championship. And then, of course, we will not be here next week because it is the bi-weekly break that we'll be experiencing for the 24 Hours of Kyalami, which is happening next Saturday. And of course, there'll be quite a variety of commentators available for that race. So we do look forward to seeing you guys there. And we do hope that in some form you have enjoyed the racing that you've seen here tonight. But from myself, Ryan Gill, from Jesse Lee, Nick Setnick behind the cameras, who's done a fantastic job, all the stewards here at RCI who are still working so hard, and everyone else here that is part of the RCI staff. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your evening.